Okay, hello, good evening, and good morning in case you're joining from a different time zone. Welcome. I have Himanshu with me. The topic today promises to be very interesting. Military innovations that are applicable in corporate, and what are the lessons that we can learn. The reason that we did this topic is me and Himanshu were having a discussion a couple of weeks back on the similarities between the standard corporate structure and those in the armed forces. So, a couple of similarities: A, both are large in size; B, both are driven by pretty strong and replicable processes. Now, with these two being given, and the risk, the cost of failure is high in both cases. In one cases, it's monetary; the other, it's monetary as well as lives lost. So, it is natural to have some amount of risk aversion. Now, given these similarities, how do they still innovate? Because the way we look at warfare and how armed forces are operating, they constantly innovate because war is an ever changing affair, as they call it. So today we would like to spend some time with Himanshu. He spent 20 plus years in Navy and associated with armed forces across the world, and now he works in the corporate sector. So he blends both pieces, and he'll talk about his experience and what are some of the learnings from there. And that is why we chose the topic for today. So I'll hand it over to you, Himanshu, if you can tell the audience a little bit more about your experience in the armed forces and then the corporate world.
Thank you very much, Sushant. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here amidst you all. I have had experience of about 20 years in operations, strategy, and innovation in the armed forces, primarily in the maritime forces of India, France, and Mauritius. And subsequently, I did my business management with the MIT Sloan School of Management, and for last 1.5 2 years, I have been involved with various tech teams which are involved in innovation and entrepreneurship at MIT ecosystem. And I love innovation processes and people, so that's how I'm engaged with a lot of technical teams which are working to produce different products, services using technology and innovative thought process, be it in hackathons or be it part of various startups which are producing something which can make a difference in our lives. And that's how we got connected, and we just thought I will share our experiences so that it could encourage the whole idea of innovation, and it need not to be a break through innovation which will change the world. It all starts with small ideas which can make the difference, be it in the processes or in the technology or in the way we conduct our approach towards our human resource. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Himanshu, for that introduction. I'll start with the first question. If you can demystify what exactly is innovation in military, and how does it actually work?
So very interesting question. People generally understand that military is very very rigid and does not require anything which is innovative or out of the line. But like you mentioned earlier, military generally operates in domains which are evolving very very fast, where is like earlier, let's say about 5 years back, the environment where a particular force was operating would change dramatically because of technological advances. Also, change in the various environmental factors, how things are happening. The warfare, which was earlier limited to, let's say, the battlefield, now has a lot of other facets to it. It became hybrid. It has cyber. It has asymmetric part of it. So that's why it is very important for a military commander and also his or her juniors who are on field to continuously think ahead of the time that what will be the next move of the adversary or of the enemy, and that is why they have to constantly evolve their ideas, their thought processes, and definitely products and technologies which are in use. So generally we think that innovation is only about the technology, I would beg to differ because it is not only about technology. It is also about how do we employ that technology, how do we employ that product, and more than that, how the entire team adapts to the technology. You can consider that you might have the best of the technology, but if the team has not understood how to use it tactically on ground, in conjunction with various other factors which come into play when you are in a battlefield, it would be environment, it would be the human factor, it would be the way the information is flowing from higher echelon to the lower grassroots ground force which is carrying out the operation. The technology may fail. So that's why it is a holistic mix of tech product plus the people, their training, and the doctrine which have been established, the tactics which have been established, how to use it, what will be the flow of information both the ways, up and down. So
Okay,
that's why it is a very interesting way how it has been adopted in various levels, and why it is important to adopt it in a way that right from national strategy to an operation strategy to a tactical level strategy, it gets imbibed and it gives you the results what you are asking for from the tech which you are employing. Thank you.
sure. That's an interesting piece, especially the part that you bring out about people and how they utilize the technology. Because a lot of times what we've seen in especially in the corporate world is we tend to get fanciful ideas with new technology. It's almost considered a silver bullet. And with the growing trend wherein everybody perceives AI or hyper automation to be the next big thing, which will potentially solve everything by itself. So the point that you bring out is very very applicable, that all technology can go kaput if it's not utilized effectively by people on the ground. So that's interesting. The second bit that I would like to pick your brains on is most of the standard operating procedures, as they are called, have evolved from the armed forces, right? As in they have an SOP for almost everything. uh, at some point it looks like standardized working versus innovation are at loggerheads. They on the face of it, they seem to be very divergent approaches. So how does that fit in the military culture?
So, like you rightly said, and that's true for any, I would say, corporate setup as well. When the operations are on, you generally follow your SOPs and continue to run with them, and you do not want to tinker with them with any kind of innovation or any kind of deviation because your target is fixed. You have to continue the production line. You have to continue the operation so that you deliver to the customers, or in this case, you meet the mission. In case of military, so there is a very, I would say. Different way of approaching the way innovation is done in military. There are various sectors or verticals which are identified where innovation may be required, or where innovation has been it has been felt that innovation is required. It can ameliorate the way that particular mission is being done. So there are standalone units which undertake these innovations. It may be towards enhancing the capability of a particular weapon or sensor or a machinery. It may be how you can change the SOP or the tactics of using that particular machinery or weapon or sensor. How could you integrate a third set of weapon sensor? For example, if let's say you're talking about a maritime theater where you have a fleet of ships which are operating with their helicopters, and you've just inducted a new aircraft which has certain features which could enhance the tactical capability of your fleet, a surface fleet which is operating over a area of operation, let's say in Pacific Ocean. Now, it will be very important to undertake some trials to get to understand how that particular aircraft can enhance your capability. It could be that the aircraft will be able to provide you maritime surveillance ahead of the movement of the fleet. So, if fleet is moving from point A to point B in Pacific Ocean, you would like to have certain intelligence if the battle space ahead of you is all clear, it is all friendly, or if it has some kind of adversary or some neutrals operating. So what exactly is done that there are various phases. You undertake few trials initially, perhaps with one or two ships to see the capability of this particular new aircraft, and then slowly, when it's proven with one or two ships, you integrate them with a larger fleet of ships, and you then put SOPs in place that what will be the way of communication, how will the data will be streamed, will it be only verbal, will it be on radio? That will be too cumbersome. So why can't we have something else? Perhaps you will use a data link. Now, if data link has to be used, can both the ends of this whole link, do they talk to each other? Are they on the same language, or they require some patch code which is to be done? All those trials are done, and subsequently it has to be militarized, it has to be mil standard, so you have to put some secure communication link on it. So all these things are tried out at a smaller scale. Once it is proven, then they enlarge it, then they do a lot of trials on it, and finally it comes out as a tactics. And very importantly, to connect these tactics which are happening at level of fleet, how does it change the whole strategy? So if I draw the parallel with this particular analogy for a corporate adoption of a new technology or
Hmm.
a new way of doing work, what will be important is that let the operations continue. Take the feedback from the floor, from the production line, from the operations leader, that what is it, what can help them. Sometimes they know what can help them, sometimes they do not know. For that, you require perhaps some special team of consultants or some special team of technicians who are working, whom I would call the technocrats, or I would call them the doctrine people who are working separately. Perhaps they are studying the environment, they are studying the advances which are happening across the globe in your field or your industry, or sometimes industry which is related or not exactly related, but there is something which you can adopt to your vertical. And these are the two ways. Then you check and see if you can run a pilot somewhere. You run a pilot which is not interfering with your main operation, because main operations have to continue, because that is what is actually giving you the revenue, that is what is making your company go ahead. But it's very, very important to ensure that the innovation is undertaken, it is tried out. It may be very small idea which has come from the team. It may be a very out of the box idea which has come from a consultant or from your own innovation hub which you have created in your company, and you are always trying it out, and then once it is tried out, then you perhaps enhance it in only one business unit, and you see how is the business unit taking it, how people are adopting to it. Very important part of it, if you are actually undertaking any change in the whole process or implementing a new technology, the biggest point comes into play is the adoption by your own people first, if they understand, and subsequently how the customers are actually viewing it.
Mm.
And I would like to quote one of our professors at MIT and ASB, Professor Loredana. She says, "What job is easy, people are not. So what is important is to get people on board to understand, and first of all, your own team members, so that they understand this is being done. So it may be automation, it may be use of AI, it may be use of data. If we are able to get our own team members understand, perhaps they may require some training, perhaps they may require some kind of workshops where they understand how these technologies will help them evolve as a professional, as well as a better human being, because they will have more time for themselves, they may use that for something else. So those, and that has to flow from the topmost leadership, I would say. The CEO has to give that directive, so that it trickles down and it has to be seen in action for everyone. So that is something which will have to be seen. And I would say that it is very important for companies to maintain the competitive advantage over their competitors, or to continue to lure their existing customers, that they continuously innovate, because the interest of customers is very, very I would say short lived if you are not able to satisfy their requirements, not able to give them the service, the quality of service which they demand. And that is where the whole, I would say, the leadership comes into play. So that's why it will be important to, I would say, preempt or proactively think about what is the requirement, how can we keep our customers satisfied, how can we keep delighting them, and then keep innovating. And that's like I said earlier, and It has been the fact. It is not only limited to the product or service. Perhaps the company can think about creating an ecosystem just around the core product which it's making. If it's a paint company, let's say, it may not be able to evolve a new technology for paint,
Mm.
but perhaps it can have an ecosystem where the salesperson in your flagship store in downtown Gurgaon can provide that kind of update to the customer when they come to select the paint, that they know, okay, these are the uh, properties of this particular paint and it can help. Perhaps they can also collaborate with the local paint of the painting shops or the painters who actually undertake painting, that they conduct some workshops for them, that how can actually this particular paint can change. So the whole ecosystem is there to support the customer. So customer definitely will become more loyal to that particular paint company or whatever could be the consumable goods which are being provided by the company. Thanks.
Perfect. That's very interesting. Uh, what you also mentioned initially, and we've seen a lot of examples of this. At least the stories that I've heard is, if I take you back to some of the famous battle stories. So whether it's the Viet Cong facing the mighty U.S. Army, or in the Indian context, if it's the Battle of Rezangla, or Abdul Hamid, as we've all been brought up with those stories. These were smaller teams, or comparatively numerically inferior forces, taking on a very mighty opponent with very very limited hardware at their disposal, but they came out winning that particular engagement. So what are some of the lessons? Is this something that can be construed as tactical innovation, wherein you innovate on a real time basis with the limited resources that you have? Because if you can give your thoughts on that, and then I'll put the second part of the question forward.
Yeah, actually, it's a very good context, and I would say that military may be the good example that if you would like to achieve your aim or mission, you have to continuously innovate. Now, what exactly is innovation in corporate parlance as well? It is an invention which can be commercialized or which can be used for continuing your mission or objective. So these examples which you cited, that they give a very good indication that if you have to attain your objective or your goal, you may be running short of resources. So that is where you, when you think out of the box, either in terms of resources or in terms of varying from the tactics, take that risk. And that is what is important factor which we have to consider as leaders, both in military and corporate. One has to consider the risk. Definitely, there are various means of managing the risk. Like again, a lot of corporate companies nowadays are following. This is a very important part of risk management called operational risk management, which from military has come to the aerospace industry. NASA follows it, ESA follows it, ISRO follows it, and a lot of corporate companies also follow it. You are measuring the risk, and then you are taking, I would say, calculated risk, which is a good thing, which allows you speed of execution. And if it allows you speed of execution, you can achieve your objectives. And in this case, what happens is you are not committing too much of resources. In case of military, it may be in terms of lives, it may be in terms of losing a very important strategic point which may remain for decades, for centuries, especially when you are fighting a battle for territorial claims. And same thing could be in corporate. If you do not take that risk, you do not evolve uh, tactically, you may lose the strategic battle. And like for example, I mean, all of us know how Kodak could have been a
Mm.
different company today because their engineers had developed the digital camera. That time, perhaps introduction of the digital camera into the market would have been a very small tactical move, or somebody may say it would have been a disruptive innovation in the
Mm.
whole field. But the leadership of Kodak that time realized that they are doing fantastically fine with what they were doing with the films and the paper prints, and they decided not to introduce this particular product which was available with them. They didn't have to buy it from somebody else, they didn't have to source it from somebody else. They didn't do it. Others who did it, they transformed the way right now we do digital photography, and we all know what Kodak is today. So that is why. that is what it is for the leadership to decide, that where you want to undertake these small but very important innovations. And as we always say, the height side is always 6 by 6. So that's why perhaps it will be important for all leaders to have a segment of team which are continuously thinking aloud. Innovating will come second, and they are getting ideas. Either they keep having some kind of innovation competitions within the team, or they invite that flow of exchange of ideas from people on the floor, on the grassroots level where they're working, so that they give you ideas, because they are the ones who are very close to how the operations are happening, how the work is flowing. And their ideas, with some fine tuning, could actually change the course of the whole company, and continue to have you that advantage where you will be able to have the market uh, value which you are creating for your customers. And it is always said that it is important to kind of think it through, that how you would like your customers, or how you would like your product or service to be perhaps 2 years from now, then only focusing on how your competitors are doing what they are doing today. So if you are playing for the future position, then it is something which is going to give you a lot of dividends. And it's again, taking it from the military, we whenever we fire a weapon, we always fire in the future position of the enemy contact. We can't fire in the present position because if you fire it, you will miss the target. So that's why it's always important, and it calls upon everybody. And everybody, I think, in any position is a leader, to keep thinking it through, that how can they evolve. And these small tiny tactical gains, tactical innovations which may be done right on site, could actually have a very big implication on strategic gains. And all the examples which you gave, that was, they are the right example to say that those tactical moves by the local commanders, or the local team leaders, who were there on site, have actually changed the course of history in the long run. And I think there are similar examples like this in corporate world also, where small I would say, I will not even call them innovation, modifications, either in the way the product was sold, the way it was marketed, the way a particular process was run, has actually transformed the strategic positioning of a particular company. So this is something which I think should be encouraged across all the echelon of a particular company. That will definitely give a lot of value addition in future to the company. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. That was interesting. Now, Himanshu, from your perspective, I know there's a wealth of information that can be gleaned from the armed forces, both in terms of how do you structure an organization, how do you get the various parts in, etc. But if you have to summarize the top three or maybe five key bullets that are directly applicable from a military environment onto a corporate environment, keeping in mind the innovation aspect of it. So what would those three or five things be?
So I would suggest that, like in any of the military institution, at various level, there are various frameworks which are available for both leaders and the leaders at strategic positions, as well as the leaders at tactical positions, to exchange ideas, that how can they ameliorate, how can they augment the existing processes, existing technology. So similar way, I think corporate could have mechanisms where you can call them corporate innovation pathways, where you have very clear-cut processes or phases where you do experimentation, then you see how it is adopted, and then finally you actually run it through in one of the business units, and see over a period of 6 months or a quarter, and see how they are actually being liked uh, by the customers. And perhaps one way to do this is doing a prototyping or prototyping also, that you have innovated something, you, instead of committing a lot of funds to it, a lot of resources to it, you just run a prototype and see how the customers would like it, because final aim of this is to delight the customers. So that could be one way of doing it. Then very importantly, and this is true for any kind of innovation, that there are three facets of a particular work which is to be started. There are people who are using it. There are the end users. There are the operators. Like in case of military, there are the guys who are fighting the war. Then there are the technocrats, the guys who are introducing the technology or the process improvement. They could be the guys from the tech field. They could be the guys from, let's say, operational excellence field. They could be the guys who are working with organizational behavior enhancement. And they could be professors, they could be scientists, they could be your own technical team, or you could be hiring some consultants. And then the third facet of this is, which is very, very important, are the guys who are the champions, who are the guys who are connecting these two sets. And they could very well be the decision making unit within the company itself. Could be the CEO, CTO, or it could be the CFO, or could be an advisor whom you have hired, or who is there on your panel, perhaps one of the board of directors, who is interested, who is getting these two links together. And then when you have this triangle which is working very, very close knit, you will find that continuously you are getting ideas. Few of them will fail, and again, I'll give example of Amazon. Amazon takes pride in this, that a lot of their ideas have failed, but they have continuously evolved. And if you see the latest letter which the CEO, Andy Jassy, has written, the new CEO, he talks about this. The last 2 years, though, in spite of COVID, in spite of supply chain
Hmm.
fiascos, labor charges going very, very high, both the Amazon.com as well as AWS has done phenomenally well, double digit growth, 28, 30% or so. He gives the credit to something he calls incremental innovation. So continuously, when the operations are on, I mean, and everybody knows the kind of scale and the magnitude of operations which both these companies have been into, and
Hmm.
how they have transformed our lives across the globe, especially in last 2 years because of COVID. So they have improved, ameliorated their services, their products, without hampering what is happening. And if you read their blogs, and if you talk to people who are behind this, they all talk about this, because it has been across the board and right from the top leadership. So that could be a very good example for how, and they take pride in the fact that they are one of the most successful, most established 25-year-old startup. They still
Hmm.
call themselves startup, and that is the culture perhaps which can help established businesses also 150, 200 years old, those huge businesses, be it family or established businesses, multinationals, they should have. And if they find it too, I would say, cumbersome to have it integrated, they could have a separate cell, innovation cell, which is working, which happens in case of military also, because military has a lot of bureaucracy, decision making matrix is too high, and there is a separate segment which takes decision on behalf of the guy who is actually
Hmm.
firing the weapon, who is actually fighting. So that's why that could be another model which can be followed by established businesses, that you have a separate section which is actually interfering with people on ground, as well as the people who are taking the decision. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. Which almost brings us to the end. This is a conversation, especially the bit that you spoke about prototyping. Now, we don't have time to expand on that, but perhaps that is something that we can pick up on the next or the subsequent sessions. So we'll just take a quick pause for the audience. Should there be any questions, please feel free to use the chat window, and we will answer them as they pop up. In the event that you're watching the recording and you like, or you have some clarifications or further insights that you'd like to share with us, you can hit either of us up at LinkedIn, Sushant Pandey, Himanshu Joshi. You see those names, just look up our profiles, and drop us a note. If you want to do an email conversation, my email ID is sushant at easyprosol.com, and similarly it's himanshu at easyprosol.com. Just drop us a note and we'll be happy to clarify and get back to you. I believe if there are no further questions at this point, thank you, Himanshu, for taking the time out. I know it's real early morning for you, but great insights, very very pertinent as to how we can adopt them. And I look forward to future conversations with you in some time.
Thank you very much, Sushant, and everybody who's right now that in. Have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.